Jason. I'm Al McFarlane. Welcome to Conversations with Al McFarlane. What an amazing time we're in at this moment. It's seminal. I think it's a place where major and massive change is afoot, and how it comes out is questionable. What I believe is how it comes out will depend on you and me, on us, how we decide what future we will create, how we will determine that we are co-creators of whatever happens, and that we have both a duty and responsibility to leave our imprint, to make our voices known, to present our positions, to help shape what the world will be like. Now is the time to begin that discussion. Well, today is a community discussion of people that are involved in the life and fabric and well-being of our community, and we want to continue the discussion. I'm calling this discussion a continuation of the theme, Justice for George Floyd, Community Voices Speaking Out. I want to start the program by talking to my friend and brother, Melvin Carter. Melvin Carter is a recovering police officer, retired from a career of service in the St. Paul Police Department. He, like me, he's a veteran. We've talked about his status as a veteran before. He's also intimately involved in the political world in St. Paul, not only as a community organizer in his own right and mentor of young people, but as the father of the mayor of St. Paul, Melvin Carter III, and also as the husband of County Commissioner Tony Carter. So he's in the middle of the whole thing. Melvin, brother, good to see you again. For those who are listening on radio, thank you for joining us here on Conversations with Al McFarlane. And for those who are joining us on Facebook and YouTube, if you like this kind of conversation, like it and share it. Become a subscriber to our YouTube channel. We want to connect with you, stay connected. Together, we're on a mission, and it's an important mission. Melvin, good afternoon, brother.
Good afternoon, Al, and thank you for allowing me to be a guest on your show.
Sure. So lean into your microphone so I get a good, strong voice, if you don't mind. Okay. There we go. And and you can adjust your video the way you want at the same time. But talk about what it means to be a recovering ex-cop, thinking about today's events, the murder, the killing of George Floyd, and the aftermath of that, the destruction happening in neighborhoods, Twin Cities, St. Paul, Minneapolis, but also around the country and now around the world. What's your impression? What's on your mind?
Well, this thing has got me all over the place. You know, I wonder what specifically about this incident that really triggered an explosion like nothing I can recall ever seeing. Why this one after we've seen so many? You know, I got sworn in as a peace officer in 1975, and suddenly the concept of law enforcement has hijacked the whole peacekeeping mission, and I believe that's a direction that the traditionalist police officers that protect the white power supremacy, because policing started in 1836. We went to that model so we would not have to have this method of suppression. But the thing, Tony, my wife and I, she's the chair of the county board, and the pressure in my household and my family is like, you can feel it in the wall, between her and my son trying to get the best for the city and the county. And, it's just more than I can tell you. It's probably more than they would want me to tell you. But we sat here and we watched this man just kind of take a nap on his brother's jugular vein. It would almost be better if it was an aggressive, hostile, vicious assault, but Tony and I, we came across this Malcolm X quote a couple of days ago. Maybe it was just last night. And Malcolm X said this like 50 years ago. He said, it's not that there's a chip on my shoulder, but it's your foot on my neck. In this case, it was a knee on the neck. And to so many of us, I think this knee was a murder for one thing, but it was so representative of so many other aspects of our lives as Black males and Black people that it was so representative of so many things and so indicative of how many other fronts the life gets squeezed out of us.
Absolutely. There you go.
Academically, first hired, first fired, last hired, in the communities, and mass incarceration. I mean, I don't know if there's any front where we don't have where America does not have kind of a anaconda effect on our throats. This man sat on this man's jugular vein. And in so many ways, it feels like America has just been on our jugular vein in that concept. From when my ancestors were just bulldozed off around, and my grandmother sat there and cried because she had dedicated her life to leaving some concept of wealth to us. But the bulldozer just came specifically and targeted the Black community for destruction. So there I said it. And I consider myself a recovering officer because, I probably did as much time in the deep trenches of policing as possible. I live in a community in which I serve, which is not particularly common, but the community knew who to call when policing was to avoid the iron boots of oppression when the sons were in trouble. But I'm all over the place, El, but reel me in as you see fit.
Go ahead and speak to what's on your heart and what's on your mind.
Well, law enforcement versus peacekeeping. Who do you want to come to your house? I'm here to enforce the law. Just what the hell is going on around here? You want that stuff? Or do you want somebody to come there and help solve some problems? I mean, there's a big difference. Enforcement is not in the original language of community policing because, it tortures me when I hear ranking officers use the term community policing as though it's something else. If it's not community policing, it's military occupation. It's just that simple. Community policing is by the people and of the people, and it's peaceful, and it involves communication, good relationships, building trust. So we won't have to have militia. Just go back and don't take my word for this. Go back and web search Peel's 9 principles of policing. There's 9 of them, and look at what we've got. And these federations have hijacked that, and they've usurped the peacekeeping mission. The word enforcement includes force, which suggests suppression and oppression. So I think we got to go back. I'll finish with this for a while. And if we go back, this might not be a wheel we need to reinvent. We can go back to and look at Robert Peel's 9 principles of policing. The problem with that, at that time it was written, we were only 3/5 human beings. It didn't apply to us. It applied to everybody else but us specifically. But if we can make that apply to us, in terms and go back over the Constitution and glean that out and make those things applicable to us, I think we could reinvent. We can get some reconstruction going on. Thank you.
I hear you saying, Brother Carter, that there is an original sin that has not been addressed. And that original sin is our complicity, our nation's ownership and institutionalization of human bondage. When slavery was the policy and the practice of the state, that has not been resolved yet, even though we have had the Civil War and the formal end of slavery. The consequences, the legacy, and the things that were set in motion by that dynamic have not yet been addressed or resolved. Let me bring in Sister Robin Hickman Winfield to the conversation. Robin, how you doing, sister?
I'm very blessed. I'm blessed.
Let me say Sister Queen Robin Hickman Winfield. Thank you so much for being here. And what I read in the news or heard was that the Gordon Parks High School was one of the targets of vandalism. And obviously that brought you to mind immediately because you worked so hard in establishing awareness of the Gordon Parks brand, the Gordon Parks mission, his memory of his work. And the high school is one of the things that emerged in Twin Cities, reflecting and honoring his legacy. So I said, this has got to be something personal to Sister Robin. That's why I wanted to call you to get your impressions, your thoughts on that in particular, but to simply use that as a point of departure to explore our world, our artwork, our mission to change, and where do you see us in this moment of crisis?
Well, I thank you so much, Al, my friend, brother warrior, mentor you have been, and it's an honor to be a part of this discussion with you the first time in this glorious place as Mrs. Winfield. That is a blessing, because in not only this time that we find ourselves for such a time as this, as the young people say, during this time of Rona, to be with my partner, for first time in my life to not have to go through it solo is a blessing. It's truly a blessing. Melvin, brother Melvin, I think I have been participating in a number of discussions, and I have chosen to set a tone in the spirit of healing. And I shared a few weeks ago, this this pearl of wisdom that came to my spirit. My beloved Black people, as our breath, actually I posted it last week, as our breath is being taken away from us in many ways, at many levels, please let us commit to breathe life into one another every opportunity we have. Because Brother Al, you said that this would also be about talking about healing. I have to set a tone first with that. Brother Melvin, you talked about the various fronts we have to be taken care of, even at a time such as this. Strategically, we have to cover every front. I was on a Zoomcast last week when a student of Gordon Parks, one of my scholars and one of my colleagues there, texted me the photograph of the building on fire. So yes, extremely personal. But I knew even coming into this tragedy that there would be people that would be aiming, and intent would be to disrupt our freedom. I knew that. And I knew that no one who looked like Gordon Parks would set fire to a building that had the image of a Black man, that had the image of a man who looked like the man who we were fighting to get justice for. That didn't make no sense. So I knew right then. But I also knew when I was able, and all night long I couldn't sleep because we couldn't go up to see how much damage was done until the next day. But it was almost as if the ancestors and Uncle Gordon's spirit himself extinguished those flames, smothered those flames so that more damage was not done to that building, right? Minimum damage. And when I checked out the social media pages of many of the young people that I walk with, the outrage of our babies. Oh, hell no, not my school. I graduated from there. So the outrage, they knew there was an affront upon something that they valued, okay? So we have so many opportunities. But I needed to make my people aware that look at how deep this thing is. We got to understand who is doing this. My heart was equally in pain about just everything that's happening. When I heard of McGizzy Communications, no longer there. I walked with my brothers and sisters in the indigenous community 40 years ago when that institution was being birthed. So I am all kinds of emotions. But when I heard of the news of Brother Floyd, my mind immediately went to 30 years ago when my brother Kadar called my mother from the Minneapolis jail to tell her that he had been arrested, him and his partners, after coming out of a party. And the pain in my mother when he came home to tell us how his face was to the cement and the foot, Brother Melvin, of a Minneapolis police officer was on his neck. And from that day forward, the pain, the fear, and the anger that my mother lived with. This is so real. How many of those stories do we have? But the joy in my heart on Saturday during the governor's press conference when my big sister, Mary Merrill, spoke, and she lifted up. She said, in the words of Patty Hickman, we still have so much work to do. Brother Al, when you lifted up Mama in the paper after she passed, when you gave the tribute, you titled it, We Still Have So Much Work to Do. Mom's last week with us when she was in the hospital, and she sat with her sister, Josie Johnson. She could hardly speak, but she whispered, Josie, we still have so much work to do. That was the theme of her homegoing. So we have lived the answers we seek today. We have. So while, yes, I do a lot of work honoring the legacy of Uncle Gordon because he's a vision of possibilities for our young people. And yes, my heart was broken, but I'm also inspired. As the executive director and CEO of Soul Touch Productions, I am in the business of touching souls. One of my interns said, Miss Robin, what are we gonna do now? Then that was wrong when Rona hit. I said, oh, darling, we're going to rest, restore, and get ready for the reset. Because people now more than ever are going to need soul touchers. We are going to need soul touchers. We need to breathe life into one another now more than ever. We need to be strategic now more than ever. As you said, Brother L, now is the time. We know what we have to do. People can talk Sankofa, but we better be living Sankofa and reclaim that which has been lost and stolen. I have gotten through this time. I have prayed when Rona came on us. My faith, everything. What is God telling us? What is he doing in this? What is he doing in this? So my faith has gotten stronger. I have walked in celebrating my partner. I've gotten into my art. That is why I'm sitting in front of my soulful dolls. I'm deep because Robin said I can now have a sabbatical and get into my art, which is now I post and people all over the world beg me, post. I look forward every day to your post of your art because my soulful dolls heal souls. You see Takumba in the back. My first real piece of art, it's called Spirit Sisters. So I'm taking care of Robin well for the first time in a long time so that I can be about the business of touching souls. Healing has to be part. We have to find some joy in the middle of the struggle, which speaks to the work that I've done forever with the Woodway, claiming our rightful places in these institutions that will make sure that we're healthy and healing. We have to be on it. If I never say another word during this Zoom cast, we have to be on it on every level, every front, Brother Melvin. And to be honest with you, my dear Brother Melvin, we come from the same place. There is an amazing exhibit that I was blessed to do at the Minnesota Museum of American Art, and we were smart enough to make it a virtual tour of A Choice of Weapons, Honor and Dignity. The visions of Gordon Parks and Jamel Shabazz, our glory, resilience, love images, faith images, hope images of our people is there, virtual for us to see as we go through this, to be reminded of the amazing, powerful people we are. As we go through this struggle, let's embrace those things that will fuel us, fortify us, heal us as we go through and press through. 2020, clear vision I have, unstoppable. Let us breathe life into one another. And I thank you because no longer will anyone put a bushel basket over this light that God has placed in me. I'm coming blazing. Thank you, Al.
Robin Hickman Winfield, Soul Touch Productions. Robin, thank you. We're going to keep this going. You know, I want to bring a couple more voices in because you raised the question, and Melvin, I think you did as well, about where this damage is coming from. And on the one hand, we see on TV a lot of young people, looks like to me, 15-year-olds and 14-year-olds and kids, that are influenced. And I know the excitement. I was 14 at one point in time. I know the excitement of a bonfire, but I know not to start a fire, right? I know the excitement of melee and just mayhem. Whether I created it or not, I recognize it when I'm in it. So I'm looking at young people understanding their native and appropriate curiosity, also their righteous indignation and their resolve not to see in their lives what they see in their parents' lives, what they see in their parents' lives that they object to and that they reject, that they resist, is the incessant condemnation, the incessant marginalization, and the incessant command and demand to take low, to back up, and to surrender their voice and their power for the greater good or for the peace of the moment. And that peace of the moment ends up being institutional. It means you got to surrender this forever, and that you cannot bring your voice to the table of decision to where power abides. And so I think that young people see that in their parents, but they also know their parents have talked about the rightfulness and the righteousness of recognizing who you are and assuming responsibility for adding your voice and exercising your power. So there is a moment here of both conflict, but also a moment of hope. Well, one of the things that we've talked about is who's doing the damage. Yes. While we see TV, who's doing the damage? And some of us are questioning, and it's being reported that a lot of the damage is being done by agent provocateurs, people that might or might not be members of our community. Some may be, but some clearly are not, who have a specific organized agenda here in Minnesota and are operating as cohorts, even on a national level, with a sophisticated system of creating havoc. So my neighbor, John Jameson, is the chairman of the board of the neighborhood I live in, Willard Homewood neighborhood. The larger group is the North Side Residents Redevelopment Council that represents this and other neighborhoods. John called this morning to say, you know what, Al, we gotta, and John lives about 3 blocks from me, down the street and around the corner. We gotta pay attention because there are lots of calls and reports about people seeing things that don't look right and don't feel right. John, thank you for being here. First of all, thank you for the call. And I said, this is worth talking about today on the program. So thank you for being here. Tell me what's going on in your mind, first of all, and what are you seeing? And what are you calling to tell neighbors like me that we need to do to be conscious, aware, and not paranoid, but aware?
Absolutely. Thank you very much, Al. I'm glad you got this forum going on. I really appreciate it. And I'm glad I definitely reached out to you today about this. And I want to say hello to everyone here. My good friend, Robin. We've been knowing each other for quite some time, and everyone else, Melvin. I want to thank you for joining in on this. This is very important for our community. One, I guess I want to just start out by saying that, we have a lot of pain already in our community. This isn't, it's already been here. It's way here. It was been here much, before COVID. We've been dealing with inequities for really way too long, that we've already experienced. And COVID basically just magnetized it. And now we're in a situation where I'm, feeling distressed in my own community. And I have many neighbors that are feeling the same way because there are outside agitators that are getting involved in things and that are doing things in our community for whatever reason. And I think, you said something, Robin, that struck a chord in my mind about us as African people, and that is our ingenuity. And figuring out ways to move on, survive, and get through things. And this is the time that I think we need to really be doing that. This is what I want to say is the things that are going on in our community right now. I'm getting, I have a network of people that I know in this community. I lived in North Minneapolis, around the corner, like Al said, for over 25 years. And being the board chair of NERC, I've interfaced with a ton of community people, and residents, good residents that work hard. I don't care if they're renters or homeowners. It doesn't matter on our front. The residents, they live in this community. And what I can say is that dealing with the anguish and everything that's connected with George Floyd, and my condolences goes out to his family, and our community suffers when we have rogue officers acting the way that they did. And we've been through that trauma, right? We've been through that trauma too long as well. But I want to say that what people are doing is they're taking advantage of the opportunity. And it really doesn't matter who it is, to be honest with you, in my view, because if you live in a community, don't get me wrong, corporate establishments and so on and so forth, we know the status quo and institutionalized everything that we experience. But when you see certain things go away in your community and you start looking at what's going on, to torch Gordon Park School or to loot a school that is founded by someone who is iconic to the Black community is an atrocity. And we have things going on in North Minneapolis where they're burning down the only gas station we have, within miles. We already have a food desert. So what do you want, dry it up more? I mean, I don't understand that mentality. I don't really think that whatever community member, whatever resident that is here really, hopefully, wants to see that. And so at some point, you have to stop and give it pause and say, why are we doing this to North and South, Minneapolis, to certain areas, to where people are out, residents are out guarding their properties, their businesses with guns. I mean, you guys, this is war. They put a war on neighborhoods right now. And community leaders, what's on my mind is call everybody that knows anybody. And there's no reason that North Minneapolis should have 3 cop cars to cover all of North right now, especially right now. The mayor, the governor, council members, anybody and everybody need to be involved with what's going on here. What I would like to do is increase our communications in the neighborhoods. My call out is to all neighborhood leaders, all neighborhood block club leaders to get organized and get communication going on. And we can use NERC, Northside Residential Redevelopment Council. Calls can come in there, because I tell you what, you call 911 and they tell you they don't have enough cruisers to get to the situation. And these actors they're doing things in different areas to spread out, the resources. So our normal structure that's in place that would handle emergencies, EMS and everything else, they were being flooded with random calls.
What specifics are you discovering in North Minneapolis, John Jameson?
Yeah, last night there was a car 2 blocks from us that was torched. I heard it. The window was broken out. They threw an incendiary into the back of the window of the vehicle, and it's ignited.
Have you heard of more of that happening? I mean, what?
I haven't heard any more of specifically vehicles being set on fire as of yet. That was one of the first ones that I seen in our neighborhood. But I have heard of a lot of random gunshots. I've heard of a lot of people being accosted. And I know that we want things to be factual. I do know that we have people here on Broadway guarding business that have literally been in gunfights, okay, on Broadway. And I know this stuff has happened. Okay, these are credible people that are guarding North Side. I call it North Side strong, because whatever's going on, you want to come up in this camp, I'm sorry. You're not going to come over here in North Side acting a fool. It ain't going to happen. There's going to be people out there that are going to block it. But we have to be. What I want us to do is be more vigilant, have our communication raised to the level that it needs to be, and documenting things. And so clearly documenting whatever we can. If we can photograph it, if we can videotape it, because there are questions. People are there's that question out there, is this really happening? Mm-hmm. Well, I can tell you what, in my neighborhood, you guys, there's gunshots going off multiple times last night.
You bring your colleague, your counterpart, Diana Hawkins in. Diana Hawkins is the team leader at the Hawthorne Neighborhood Council. Hawthorne Neighborhood Council has been conducting the Hawthorne Huddle, which is a monthly gathering of community residents and civic and cultural leaders for the past 30 years, I believe. This week, the monthly Hawthorne Huddle is going to be held on Thursday morning at 7:30, the usual time, but this time it'll be virtual. And I'm proud to have been asked to convene it through a Zoom meeting like we're doing now, where the program will be presented, discussions will be had, and where communities, our communities in North Minneapolis, but those beyond, can participate and share through Facebook and YouTube. Diana, first of all, thank you for what you're doing, and like John Jameson, for the work that your organization does to build and bind community. What's the thinking right now as the primary needs in Hawthorne and West Broadway and North Minneapolis, given the tension around the George Floyd killing and COVID-19, and you were already dealing with opioid and drug abuse concerns in this neighborhood?
Well, hello, everybody. First off, let me say, Al, thank you for having me. As a person that is a community activist that has been out here for over 25 years fighting in the same neighborhood, you guys, I am heartbroken. I was instrumental in helping to build up Broadway, and to see it burnt down now, you just don't know. The need is great. As you know, people have been in U.S. Bank parking lot the last couple of days, giving bags away. The trauma is our babies. Our babies are calling. That's the trauma. Our babies and our elderly. Our elderly can't get to the store. We have elderly in Hawthorne. They can't get places. They can't get their medicine, just like in South and other places. So the need is great there. But it's terrible, you guys. I lived through a riot in the 60s, and it was nothing like this. There was no killing, and this was in Pennsylvania. And to be here now in this riot and to see the people that are dying, this is terrible. So the goal is to bring community leaders, elected officials. We need to heal. How can we heal, first of all? And second of all, like you said, John, what is the need? How can we as community people service our residents? Because some of them can't get to us. Some of them don't have phones now. Forget the computers. They can't go to the libraries. So what do we do? Or how? How do we do this? So that's our goal with this huddle, is to figure a way that we can help the North, the South, the East, the West, because it's bad all over. That is going to be Thursday morning, 7:30. You can listen in Insight News Facebook. You can listen on YouTube at Insight. We have some elected officials that are going to come on. We need to bring them together. We have asked John Harrington to come on and give us some insight. We just need to know, where do we go from here? How can we heal as a nation, period? Because this is bad.
It's a good place to do a segue. I want to introduce Brother Lester, who a couple of days ago filed paperwork to run against Ilhan Omar for Minnesota's 5th Congressional District. And Brother Lester has been a candidate before. I think he was a write-in candidate for that position several years ago. If I'm correct, you can correct me if I'm wrong. But you are, you are a journalist, an author, a teacher, community organizer. You've worked as the community communications director for Reverend Jesse Jackson's Operation Push, and the communications chair for the St. Paul NAACP, and you've been a general assignment reporter for the Chicago Daily Defender. You've done pieces in the St. Paul Pioneer Press, and you were the recipient of a prestigious MacArthur Fellowship, where you studied media processes and the effects of media at the University of Minnesota School of Journalism and Mass Communications. So with that, you have decided to run as a Green Party candidate against Ilhan Omar. I'll ask you to say why you're doing that, but for this conversation, put it in the context of the topic at hand: justice for Brother George Floyd and the impact of COVID-19 on communities of color, Black communities in particular. Welcome to the program.
Thanks so much for having me, Al. I enjoyed being on your radio show a couple of years ago. I'm actually running for the DFL this time. I ran under the Green Party in the past.
Thank you for clarifying that. That's fine, yeah.
And I think it's just so important when we think about the root of why white police officers feel the way they do about Black people or the white community as a whole. How people are informed, I think is just very, very important. And one of the issues I've been writing about is Black classical cultures. I mean, Blacks, we really are the royal family. But when the average police officer goes down the street, he has been informed by, it's just like the United States, how we talk about China. Usually it's nothing good about China, it's always bad things about China. So we need to realize that, and especially now, I think in this period where a lot of people are not working, they're at home, I think we need to use the internet and try to begin to influence the discussions, whether it's, social media, with newspapers, of course, the kind of show that we're on right now, that's very, very important. But I decided to run because I sent Ilhan information on the information I talked with you the last time I talked with you about this, when the King Tut exhibit came to town, for example. No one mentioned that King Tut was Black, And so what does this say to our children when we're telling our children one thing, but they go to school and they're getting something else, And then, and Robert, I've had the opportunity to guest teach over at your uncle's, your uncle's school, and our children are just being so informed by negative popular culture that we gotta. It's tantamount to our hands being tied, just like Floyd's hands were tied. Our hands were tied for centuries, but now our hands are not tied, and so this is an opportunity for us to truly, despite the difficulties, take advantage of this situation. When Dr. King, right before he was killed, he said he was going to Washington to cash our check. He literally had begun to talk about an annual basic income for people. Now, I'm not sure if you guys listened to what Yang was saying during his presidential run, but what he looked at, and I agree with him wholeheartedly, we have a $20 billion gross domestic product. And in 2008, it was about $4 billion that the Congress okayed to go to banks. Why not, until COVID is taken care of, at least for the next 9 months or 12 months, we could put trillion dollars. I said billion, $trillion. If we can put $4 trillion in banks, why not $5 to $6 trillion into the people for the next 9 to 12 months? Let people relax. Let people cool out. Let people get on the internet, and everybody could be researching for COVID. This is not a time where we need to have elected officials who are doing business as usual. Business as usual is not going to get it. We need to talk with Joe Biden. We need to have a school superintendent, whether he's Black or whether he's a white superintendent, who's aware that makes sure that the full Black history is told to the whole nation and the whole globe. You know, before the Minoans, before the Greeks, you had Minoans, Black folks. Before the Romans, you had the Etruscans, Black folks. You had Egypt, the entire Middle East, and we can go on and on. We are a special people. But I hear kids in school, a girl asked me, how did we become Black? This is what a young, Black girl said. So, as far as the rallies that are going on right now, I would hope that they do not stand down until we get some grievances answered. And I would hope that more of us realize that Congress and the Treasury can give us a universal basic income.
John, let me ask you to respond, and I'll ask Melvin and Robin the same question. How do we navigate the two things that are providing tension? Les just talked about the need to keep on marching. I just heard you say you hope the protests don't stop until we achieve the aims, the goals, the legitimate demands we're making. At the same time, you, James, Brother Jameson, have talked about the need to be equally aware of efforts to subterfuge or to hijack our activity and our interest for other means, and to be mindful of people, whether they're outsider, fifth column, or even ill-informed, misdirected, guided from our neighborhood, our own sons and daughters. We can't exclude ourselves from the capacity to do wrong and to be misguided and even to be evil intentioned. We are human beings as well. So how do we negotiate, navigate the righteousness of the bid for freedom and for awareness and consciousness, but at the same time, protect ourselves from evildoers, whether from outside or among us? What do you think? How do we do that?
Are you talking to me, Al?
Actually, you're talking to John Jameson first, and then I'll come to you, Melvin Carter.
Yeah, so I think first off, I just want to say,
we got a little signal issue there. Is everybody hearing everybody?
I am. I don't know, Melvin. Melvin, why don't you go ahead?
Yeah, Melvin, why don't you go ahead, because John is frozen up on us.
Sorry about that. Can I hear?
Go ahead, Melvin, first, and come back to John.
One of the main things we can count on America to do is to figure out ways to exploit us and exploit our children. So we got to just be unaware and ever so vigilant of that. I'm thinking that we need to proceed with great caution and great diligence, because right now I'm seeing, my sense is that people are figuring out ways to exploit this issue and use our children for such a thing as this. To go over there and annihilate the schools is evidence of that. And just kind of close out with, I was at Russell Ballinger's circle the very last time, and we were talking about the COVIDs, and I very cavalierly, what's the word? in a cavalier kind of way, I said that as a black man, another thing coming to kill me got to get in line, you know, and then this, and I don't know that I'm so cavalier about that now, but
Be careful what you ask for, right?
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
yeah. And so I just want to say that another culprit in this whole thing is the Minnesota Post Board. I believe that they were the ones that responsible, because you got to ask yourself, how do all these bloodthirsty yahoos get hired? Well, the Minnesota Post Board hide behind. They're like the Wizard of Oz. They hide. Nobody knows who they are, and they come up with these standards and these requirements. You can't even apply to get on any police department without getting their okie doke first. And so I think they are as complicit, if not more, as complicit in this whole exploitation of law enforcement as the federations. So I wanted to say that.
I think
So before you go, Robin, the issue of looking at this 9 minutes that we have graphically watched the loss of a life, right? To me, that is, among other things, it's sacred, number one, because we witnessed a sacred item being stolen, taken away. At the same time, it's also creating a tunnel, a way to examine, and I think you said this, Melvin, this question of the culture, our people, with the knee of society at our neck, killing us, right? And that we therefore must take this opportunity to not only examine the details of what was transpiring in those 12 minutes, but in 12 minutes like that, or 9 minutes like that, happening all over the country, and that in ways that have been happening for years and years and generations, extensions of what's happened beyond slavery and into slavery. But we also should use this lens to look at the impact of COVID-19, and use that lens to look at the impact of healthcare disparities in general, to look at economic disparities, education disparities, homeownership, wealth, power disparities. Everything is on the table, and I think it's our obligation and our duty to say so, to name it, and to demand that, and to declare that we will not change the conversation. We are setting the conversation, and the conversation from this point on must acknowledge our existence, our humanity, and our right to be ourselves. So John, back to the question that I was asking, then I'll have close out with you, Robin. Got about a minute, John. How do you negotiate, number one, elevating the need for righteous indignation and the passion the young people bring to create social change that's historic in the Black community and in the world, and at the same time mitigate those evildoers who will take advantage and try to destroy under the cover of the emerging good?
Yeah,
just a minute.
Yeah, it's a both and you know, I definitely, I'm a strong believer in us doing our protesting and you know, making this, you know, it's powerful that our community and young people and old people, all people alike, have came together to you know, build on something that we need. And it's unfortunate it took a life to get us motivated to go out and do this, because we need to have that kind of energy 24/7 continuously until we get this thing solved. You know, we can't go away from that, and I don't want anyone to do that. The flip side right now, though, that what I want people to do is communicate. I think all neighborhood community organizations need to be communicating, because we got to deal with what's on the streets now, today, in our face, and that are devastating homes and residents and individuals on a day-to-day, day in, day out basis. And we got to protect the lives of these residents, of our residents in our communities.
John,
so whoever's out there, what I can say is that any cars
90 seconds left, John. Let me go to Robin. Robin, the final word's going to be yours, because we're out of time. John, sorry to cut you off. Robin, what's on your mind? What do you think?
Okay. When you called me, you said we could, again, plant seeds of healing. And come Sunday, oh, come Sunday, for me, that's the day. And this past Sunday morning, early, Stephen and I got a call from my village godfather, Mahmoud El Kati. And it was church before church, because I was reminded that long ago, at a young age, that as this village, we received our armor culturally, historically, to press through this. I shared with Mock, remembering when he retired from McAllister, a quote that he lifted up from one of Uncle Gordon's dear friends and one of our treasures, James Baldwin. It's time for lovers of humanity to find one another. And so I would leave us with that, and I would leave us again with, my beloved Black people, please let us, every opportunity we get, breathe life into one another.
There we go. Well, listen, I'm Al McFarlane. The hour goes so fast. This is Conversations with Al McFarlane. If you've joined us by Facebook or YouTube, like the program, share it, subscribe to our YouTube channel. These programs are going to be going every day on social media at Facebook Live. And I think we're going to be bringing these conversations to you every day in the evening at 8 o'clock. You'll be getting announcements about that. But our goal is to keep us connected, John Jameson, so that our community, our voices are heard. I'm Al McFarlane. We'll see you next week for the regular broadcast of Conversations with Al McFarlane. But check me out, check us out, starting, I think, tonight, if not tonight, tomorrow night, 8 o'clock, right here on KFAI.
Thank you, Al.
Back to the studio.
Thank you, Al. Thank you, Al McFarlane, for